Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel. I'm Kit, and today we are reacting to Just Pearly Things. Before we get into it, I would like to share a cute cat video to show my appreciation for everyone watching, and I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons and channel members. And now, let's get into it. For anyone who doesn't know, Just Pearly Things is a red pill grifter who saw the amount of money that could be made by saying what she thinks men want to hear, and, well, over 1 million subscribers later, she's built herself a network, so it looks like she made a good gamble. In April, she posted a reaction video to Müncat's I Debunked the Entire Manosphere from June 2022, and, well, Müncat's video is nearly 2 hours long, Pearl's reaction is 30 minutes. Münecat provided 6 pages of sources, Pearl provided none. Münecat also provided links to 2 men's organizations, and Pearl did not. I'll link both videos, my sources, and some men's organizations actually helping men below. And now, well, we have a lot to get through, so let's get started.
Today we're talking about hypergamy forms of female hypergamy or hypergamy. Roll sound different there. Oh my goodness. Hypergamy is a huge females engage in hypergamy across the platform.
First of all, let's look at the supposed evidence that they have for hypergamy. This is a study which revealed that 5,000 years ago, after the rise of agriculture, a huge uptick in wealth disparity meant that there were a small group of very rich alpha males that reproduced with, on average, 17 women, cooking the rest of men into sexless oblivion. To deal with this, we developed the monogamous system, which ensured no man was left out of the reproductive.
I assure you there are still men left out of the reproductive marketplace. I assure you. I assure you.
Okay, Münecat wasn't saying that every man is now able to reproduce. For that matter, not every man wants to have kids, and that is okay. You can still have loving, fulfilling relationships without having kids.
Sexual marketplace. This was an example of women's ingrained hypergamous nature at its peak. And if we allow the current sexual marketplace to expand to its natural conclusion, it will all happen once again.
You know, they were the incels of thousands of years ago. Yeah. They were the original, right? So they might group up to rebel against the Chad, and they will take the women and separate them among themselves. The Marxists, for example, they came to America and they destroyed thousands of years of cultural evolution. We live in a primitive sexual market, just like it existed thousands of years ago.
For a start, there is no consideration that this may have not been the women's choice. Many of these powerful alphas were probably R-wording the women in all reality and not allowing her any choice in her mating preference whatsoever.
One of the things your research has indicated is that there is a manner in which women...
See, like, that's a very modern woman mindset. Well, if women were doing that, then it must be men's fault. They must have been R-wording them. Unless she has some study that, by and large, that was happening. I'm always open to new information. I hope she brings me something that I don't know in this, genuinely.
If Münecat told Pearl something she didn't already know, would Pearl acknowledge it? A large part of Red Pill is ignoring what they don't like and twisting things they can use for their purpose. Like this, 40% of men reproduce historically. This works for claims that women are hypergamous, only willing to associate with the best of the best. And they have to ignore the fact that, in the good old days, as patriarchy reared its ugly head, women were not given the agency to choose their sexual partners. Men chose which men reproduced, not women. But don't worry, Red Pill has an explanation of that. You see, women are the ones who have actually been running the world, so everything we thought we knew about history was actually secretly being controlled by women. And there you have it. It was women all along. Now, is there proof of this? No. But that's just because the women are so smart, they covered it up. And if you're wondering why things are still shitty for women with women in charge, that's because the women are making it shitty on purpose so people don't begin suspecting the truth. You see? You can believe anything when you're set on a particular belief.
Okay, let's go.
Are attracted to people who manifest dark triad traits.
Yeah, I would say, I would add the qualifier that it tends to be younger women, teenagers or women in their early 20s.
There is no modern day evidence that women prefer bad boys.
Okay. I'll give you this is a piece of anecdotal evidence. I had a male OnlyFans model on my show. He said one of the #1 things that women request is grape seed. I've also done more interviews than I can count. I also have anecdotal experience just from talking to friends. Yeah, women do like bad boys. Stop capping. Let's just stop capping.
Fantasy is just that. Fantasy. And anecdotal evidence is not evidence. And I have to say, I've noticed that red pillers and others in that space seem to hold up the behavior of teenage girls and young women as that of women, and no. A 15-year-old is not a 25-year-old, is not a 35-year-old.
Either when they're ovulating or when they're not. There's actually more evidence to prove the opposite.
Oh, I'm interested. Okay. Physical attract. Do women prefer dominating? Autism. Is she going to go into these? Because here's the thing. It's like women tend to sleep with the bad boys. They might marry the nice guy.
Citation needed.
There is evidence that women are attracted to men with dark triad traits, but one of these traits is narcissism, which correlates with physical attractiveness and extroversion. And in much the same way, men are attracted to women with dark triad traits, as narcissism correlates with physical attractiveness. So once...
Well, you realize narcissism isn't... Like, you can't make conclusions about society at large.
Is that not what Pearl does?
What percent of the population is a narcissist? I'm seeing 1%, 1 to 5% of the population.
The physical attractiveness and the confidence is controlled for, dark triad traits actually add nothing for either gender. Basically, you can be confident and nice and you'll still be attractive to women. And
never take dating advice from women. We don't even know what we want.
If you don't know what you want, Pearl, that's on you, but don't speak for women as a whole. And yes, be confident and nice is good advice for anyone in general.
Men. But this doesn't stop JP stomping around podcasts, talking about this like it's science-based fact. The only other evidence they have for this is
I'll give you a piece of evidence. Women reproduce more with non-violent offenders than men, or women reproduce more with violent offenders than non-violent offenders.
Did she just try to say that women reproduce more with violent offenders than men do? Has she thought this through? Per this FBI chart from 2019, 72.8% of people arrested are male and 27.5% are female. Of course, women reproduce more with offenders in general than men do. Men are more likely to be offenders.
Pop Evo Psych evidence, which has not been proven to the point of peer-reviewed consensus. Peterson will maintain that...
Yeah, this is the crazy thing, is I feel like a lot of stuff that's just... Like, we been knew that women don't like nice guys. We been knew, like, there's always the crazy high school boyfriend. It's always like girls date the bad boys in their early 20s. When they get closer to getting that ring, they'll marry the nice guy.
Is Pearl seriously trying to say that teenage girls purposely try to date crazy boys? Heaven grant me patience.
Cross-culturally, women have always dated across and up.
Yeah, only 40% of men have reproduced historically. So yes, that's true.
Only 40% of males have reproduced historically, so yes, that's true. So hypergamy is true because only 40% of men have reproduced historically? Isn't one of their things how fewer men are able to reproduce today, and that is why modern dating is so terrible? Because women have become too choosy?
Females engage in hypergamy, and hypergamy is and this is also true cross-culturally, and it's also quite it's just as extensive in Scandinavia. Not quite, there's a bit of attenuation, but not much. Women mate across and up dominance hierarchies. Men mate across and down. Okay, and that has to be the case because if...
Yeah, because men swipe right 45% of the time on dating apps, where women swipe right 5% of the time. Up to 20, depends on the study.
That men swipe right more than women do on dating apps means that men mate across and down. How does she get to that conclusion? And honestly, when folks like Pearl say things like this, it's like they think men have such low standards, women should be willing to lower theirs as well. But it's good to have standards. It's healthy and it shows you respect yourself.
Obviously, it has to work that way. If one goes up, the other has to go down.
This is only half true. Peterson consistently fails to point out the hordes of studies that show that hypergamy is much less prominent in more developed countries because as an economy develops and is able to provide social safety nets and less children die at a young age, they will have less children at an older age as it is safer to do so.
True, they will have less children at an older age. What does that have to... Women still swipe right 5% of the time on dating apps. You cannot tell me that women don't date across and up. Oh, come on. Come on. I've had so many girls come on my show and tell me. I don't even know what study she's talking about.
Thanks for confirming that you didn't bother looking at the sources Münecat provided.
I would be... Look at... They want to date a guy that makes more money than them, that's taller than them, that's smarter than them, that's in better shape than them. Ideally. Men swipe right 45% of the time on dating apps.
She keeps repeating that like it means something, but all it proves is that men are desperate and casting a wide net on dating apps, which is not a good thing. Again, you should value yourself enough to have standards for who you share your life with. And let's not forget the wide ratio between how many men are on dating apps and how many women.
And they will choose a spouse later in life based on...
Yeah, that's true. But you know what's interesting? Even the women that say they don't want to get married, I always ask, for the right guy, would you get married and have kids? And they always say yes. And so to me, that indicates they just can't get the guy that they want.
Isn't that good? That they would marry and have kids with the right guy, not just whatever guy shows interest in them?
Yeah, first marriage is it 27? I thought it was closer to 30 now.
Needs, such as emotional needs. You're probably not familiar with this concept, Jordan, but people are finding other people that actually like them. So I don't know, this kind of sounds like a much better solution for all genders rather than trapping people into marriages they entered for the needs of bearing children and economic...
Feminists always have this trapping, it's like the language they use, trapping people into marriages for children, da 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 da. And it's like we always have this worst case scenario in our minds. Our feminists do.
I like how she said we and then corrected to feminists. I don't think she understood Müncat's point here, though. The point is that we no longer need to be married to have economic stability and kids, so we can marry someone we actually like when we're ready, and thus not find ourselves trapped in a marriage with someone we don't like much for the sake of finances and children.
Stability, but that's apparently the red pill utopia that we're all striving for. Peterson and his incel minions also don't account for the fact that men, on average, thanks to millennia of patriarchy, earn more than women still. So
oh my god. I can't believe people don't know about the pay gap in 2022, that they don't know the reasons why the pay gap exists.
We do.
Women make less than men because we don't work as hard.
Ah, yes. Wages are famously correlated with how hard you work.
I'm sorry. And I can say this from hiring people. I can say this from hiring people. The people that put in the most, my employees that put in the most hours are men. Men work more. The reason women get paid less for the same job is because they work less hours and they tend to negotiate less.
My experience was the opposite, but anecdotes aren't evidence. I'll leave some links below if anyone is interested in reading further, but the wage gap is so much more than just, well, men work harder and women just don't negotiate enough.
It's not surprising that we're still living with the norms of a husband earning more than a wife. Divorce rates are actually lower than ever because marriage rates are lower than ever.
Divorce rates are lower than ever. It's still 50%.
The divorce rate has never been 50%. It peaked at 41% and has been falling ever since. Which makes sense as fewer people marry these days and people also wait longer to get married.
I don't think divorce rates are lower than ever because it's 50%, and I know in the 1920s it was 20%.
According to CDC.gov, the rate of divorce in 1920 was 12 per 1,000 population, and surprisingly in 2019 the divorce rate was 2.9.
Because people are actually waiting to find...
And whose choice is that? Men or women? Men are attracted to fertility and youth, so whose choice is it to wait to get married? Men or women?
Both. She acts as though men have no choice but to go along with whatever women want, but if he wants a 21-year-old and that 21-year-old doesn't want to get married until 30, well, he has his choice to wait until she's ready or to see if he can find someone else who's young and fertile who wants to get married sooner. But I think this whole conversation is doing men a disservice. Men are not so shallow, Pearl, as to want to spend their life with someone whose only qualifications were young and fertile.
One they actually fucking like.
I don't know. You might say that. I think it's because they're running out of time. They are running out of time. Girls would be like, I don't need no man. I ain't submissive. Then at 28 to 30, she's like, oh, I was just talking. I don't even know. I was just talking. I swear to God, I was just talking. I didn't mean any of that.
Is Pearl trying to claim that women go around saying,
I don't need a man, I'm never going to be submissive,
and then at 28 they change their mind and suddenly become submissive brides because their clock is ticking?
Later in life, after their frontal lobes are fully formed. And this is actually decreasing the chances of younger, less wealthy men being left with nobody and of old female spinsters being left with nobody. But
if that was effective, why is it when the age of first marriage goes up, divorce rates have also gone up.
I shall now introduce the Goldilocks theory of marriage. Like with all things, there's nuance, something red pillers like to pretend it doesn't exist. Someone marrying at 25 does have less risk of a divorce than someone who marries at 20, and it was assumed that trend would hold true. But as it turns out, there's a sweet spot for marriage age, 28 to 32. We can't know for sure why that is, but the current theory is that you need to be old enough to understand the difference between puppy love and true compatibility, but not old enough to be set in your ways and unwilling to make lifestyle adjustments.
Hang on a minute, say the incels. There is evidence that women are initiating divorces when they get promoted. This means they're looking for higher status men.
We talk about the American institution in the United States. I want to choose a bartender world over rich guy. He is just so far removed from reality. That's monkey wrong. 70% of all marriages end because of one institution. Because less money is the money gets out of the world. They've been incentivized to do so because of the wealth transfer of women to the world. Either about the money to have these. They just want to protect themselves. That's generally why you do it. Right, so, the trade balance struggle with you. Like, take this money that the government's giving me. Now I have to sleep. You're searching for a bigger than. And they believe they got a relationship. They make them small on at a later date.
Women do initiate more divorces now because when they feel that they can support themselves, they are less likely to trap themselves in an unhappy marriage in which they are expected to do most of the household chores, causing them stress.
So you ended a marriage over chores? And this is what I mean. This is why men don't want to get married.
If the men don't want to get married, who's getting divorced?
You think it's acceptable to divorce a man over chores? Blessing. Come here. Chores. Can you imagine getting divorced over chores? Yeah, she was like, women are more likely to divorce when they get promoted because they're less likely they can support themselves, so they're not as likely to stay in a happy marriage or an unhappy marriage where maybe the chores are stressing her out. Oh my goodness.
I would like to note that Pearl is not married and last I knew has not had a serious relationship. So I can understand her bafflement over the idea of getting divorced over chores. However, that does not excuse her ignorance. When you work a full-time job and then also take on the majority of the childcare and housework and your husband sees nothing wrong with that division of labor, yes, I can see how that would lead to divorce. It's a whole thing, Pearl. It's called the second shift. Books have been written about it.
Evidence that they are leaving them for higher value males. There is also another apparently hard to swallow pill that women...
I mean, okay, let's just be real here. When women leave, are they expecting to do worse? Why would you leave someone and expect to do worse?
Let's just be real here. Do you think the men watching Pearl's channel and nodding in agreement with her think a woman is leaving her husband to find someone who will agree to a more equal division of labor? Or do you think they think she's looking to find someone taller, more attractive, or with more money? Because I bet it's the latter. The idea that there's more to relationships than how young and fertile the woman is and how attractive and wealthy the man is seems to be a hard pill for red pillars to swallow.
I'm just be real.
And will cheat on their beta male husbands with alphas. Another theory that Peterson backs up with.
Yeah, because there's two different mating strategies for women. There's like the guy you're physically attracted to and the guy that you can see yourself with long term. And that's more of like the provider type. It's very hard to find both. Some guys have both. And, that's why, I mean, like, Giselle, what's her face? What'd she do after Tom Brady? The jiu-jitsu instructor.
So there's two different mating strategies for women. The man you're attracted to and the one you see yourself with in the long term. Giselle Bündchen? What?
Further.
I'm not saying anything for this or against this. This is a purely factual biological claim. Is they pick a monogamous marriage and they cheat with high status guys. Now, obviously in the confines of the marriage, that's a terrible thing, but
that's a very uncomfortable subject, though, for women in particular.
It's an uncomfortable subject for everyone.
Right.
Is there any evidence to back this up? Absolutely not. From survey data, men admit to cheating on their spouses more than women, but the women...
It's actually really similar, the more recent studies that have come out. It's very similar in terms of cheating data. But it's interesting because if men cheat, they still are equally likely to rate their marriage as happy, where if women cheat, it's interesting. A lot of them want to get caught. And they also are more likely to rate their marriages as unhappy.
For anyone wondering, Pearl thinks it's more serious if women cheat and that for men, sex is like a handshake. Her opinion of men is so low, but so are her expectations, so I guess that's what makes it okay for her viewers.
are catching up with the men, because the most common way for someone to cheat is with someone they know, like a work colleague.
Wait. So then, okay, then this is kind of proving what she said, a work colleague. So a higher status male after she gets the promotion.
What? Münecat said the most common way to cheat is with someone they know, like a work colleague, and Pearl's takeaway is that the work colleague is a higher status male and that the woman is cheating with said higher status male after getting a promotion. That wasn't what Münecat said at all.
So now women have been allowed to leave the house more. They're actually beginning to cheat as much as men do, but there's no evidence that they've ever cheated more than men. And it's
No, I swear, I just saw a study the other day.
Since she doesn't mention the study again, I assume she couldn't find it.
still not the norm to cheat either, like it's somehow become socially acceptable. There's no societal shift away from monogamy. We still want to get married or settle in long term.
We want to, but we won't. 45% of women between the ages of 25 and 45 will be single and childless. So if we want to, why aren't we?
Well, as Pearl is a single woman herself and she has said she wants to get married, why hasn't she? But again, that's not what Münecat said. What she said was that we, meaning the majority, still want to get married or settled into long-term relationships, and the latter will not be included in marriage statistics. The 45% of single women Pearl mentioned is not a majority, and that was also a study that predicted 45% of women will be single by 2030. It's a prediction of the future, not a truth for today. And also, the study doesn't indicate how it's measuring singleness, but typically in studies, it just means you're unmarried, not that you're not in a relationship.
There's always a man that will marry a woman.
In the same video, she said men don't want to get married these days, and now there's always a man willing to marry a woman?
In relationships, humans pair bond, that's what we mostly do. We're just doing it later when we're settled in life.
If that was effective, why are we more divorced now?
We aren't. As mentioned earlier, divorces peaked at 41% and have been steadily falling ever since.
Furthermore, there is no survey data that shows that the women who do cheat are doing so with high-status men.
What, so you're cheating with a guy that's uglier and broker than your husband? That's offensive. Oh, come on.
So cheating is less bad so long as the person you're cheating with is better than your spouse? Alrighty.
If we're going to talk about this through a pop evo psych lens, surely it's more evolutionary advantageous for a woman not to be hypergamous and to be wary of the risk of getting involved with the wrong man who will not support her child. Since the woman has always been the more
Will not support your child. I'm so confused.
selective gender, she's always had a choice between a beta or an alpha.
No, but now the government funds her choice.
The US welfare system is not something you want to rely on, and I doubt the UK is any better, but any Brits watching, is that true? Can you just pop out a child and the government will pay you to raise your kid?
That's the difference. I'm not saying like women are any different today than they've always been. Now they get paid to do it. So a girl can have a kid with the alpha. Instead of going for the provider, there's more of a consequence for going for the alpha, or there's less of a consequence for going for the alpha. So basically, she can have a kid with them and then rely on the government and they'll pay her to be a single mother.
And she doesn't struggle? She just always has enough money? Enough for food, clothes, transportation? Her life is just funded by the government indefinitely? Why do I doubt this?
Especially here, they used to, I don't know if they still do here in the UK, but they'll give you free housing.
So in the UK, if you're a single mother, you just get a free house? I love how Pearl can just say this without bothering to fact check.
So why would she willingly put herself in the dangers of an aggressive, violent alpha?
Not all alphas are aggressive. It just means like good genes. Hot guy.
You can be attractive and have bad genes.
And leave her children without a father.
I don't know, but I'm telling you, I've met so many girls that have done that exact thing, that break up her home and become a single mother for no good reason. Maybe for doing chores.
So Pearl has met a lot of women who've broken up their homes for no reason. Where did you meet these women, Pearl? Perhaps you should reconsider who you spent time with.
Why not just settle down with the beta from day one who will protect her from all of the preying alphas?
Because like women want the alphas, but they can't. I mean, think about it. If you're a top 10% guy in terms of looks, what incentive do you have to settle down? Most girlfriends will let you cheat.
What incentive do the top 10% of men have to settle down? I don't know. Maybe they want a stable relationship and a family? Men are not animals. And I really doubt most women would have no problem with their partner cheating so long as said partner is hot enough to justify it.
What incentive?
These red pill men are simply projecting how they see the...
It's like, who do you think knows more about dating women? Men or women? Men or women? Who do you think knows more? So if all the guys are saying, these are my observations, instead of saying you're wrong, maybe you could listen to them and you might learn something.
Nothing is stopping someone from making observations. If you see that someone you're dating has a habit of saying X and doing Y, that's something that should be noted and discussed. The problem comes in when someone says, well, Susie, Sarah, and Sally said X and did Y, therefore all women say X and do Y. Women are not a monolith. I know people hate to hear that, makes it harder to justify treating women like shit, but it's true. People are complex individuals, and I have to wonder how sheltered some of these folks must be to think that they can generalize an entire sex. And if you're going to say something like,
Well, all the women I've dated.
rethink the people you date. If you have a recurring issue in relationships, the problem tends to be the most common denominator. And as for the ridiculous, don't listen to women about dating, yeah, if you want to date a woman, you should listen to that woman and not some random person online who's never met her or you. This is the real reason why dating these days is hard. People are determined to find some quick fix, 3 easy ways to get her in bed, 5 ways to make her fall in love with you, whatever, rather than taking the time to get to know someone and build a relationship.
market onto women when women actually see it very differently. Take it from me. If a man walks up to me and asks me for my number or asks me on a date, I'm not thinking,
Oh, wow, I wonder if he has a nice car.
Yeah, but you might say, what do you do for a living? What is your job?
Yes, people do tend to ask about things like employment when getting to know someone.
And I wonder if that's more expensive than my current
It's
boyfriend.
more expensive than my current boyfriend.
Right. You might not be thinking that, like, you might not mean to, but you know damn well you haven't. Look, you know damn well that girls are not looking to leave their boyfriends and do worse. They're not looking to leave their boyfriends and do worse, or their husbands, whatever.
An expensive car doesn't mean someone is doing better, though. They could be in massive debt because of that car.
I'm thinking, I hope this interaction ends without this man getting...
There it is. All men are angry, violent, angry men, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Unfortunately, the biggest threat to women is men. So yes, women get nervous when a man they don't know approaches them. Because while all men aren't violent, we don't just know who is and is not safe by looking at them.
violent or following me home.
Fear mentality.
No, it's called being smart, you disingenuous twit. And this is even more disgusting because I know if a woman didn't have that fear mentality and something happened, Pearl would be right there with the, well, what was she wearing? Why was she in that neighborhood? Looking for any way to make the woman at fault. But if we do take these concerns into account, then we have a fear mentality. Being cautious with strangers is simply smart. It does not mean you think all men are evil villains. It means you're aware that you don't know this person. And I'm sad to say it, but a lot of men don't take rejection very well.
By getting involved with the red pill and by learning game, you're literally giving yourself a 101 on how to give women every red flag.
Oh my God, he looks so nervous in this. You see him like touching his arms.
In the fucking book.
To learn game is just learning how to talk to women.
You talk to women like they're a person, because they are. Problem solved, and my advice is free. And honestly, you'd be better off paying for therapy than paying for dating advice.
By far the most tangible evidence the manosphere has for modern day hypergamy
I would just say dating apps. Oh my God, 5%.
is from dating apps.
There we go.
Yeah,
There we
that's
go.
it. Data from dating apps.
Which is the number one way people are meeting nowadays.
Since Pearl doesn't bother citing her sources, I did a search and, well, some places say online, which doesn't mean dating apps, and other sources say friends, work, hobbies, and so on, so take that as you will.
Men do not get nearly as many options as women. Even if we're talking about top tier guys, they still cannot be against the 2009 official blog post survey. Cupid showed men men against most of the medium. 8% of most of the men on Tinder over the full content females still swipe right on. 6%. When it comes to females, only swipe right on 4.5%.
Yeah, she's gonna try to discredit it by saying like, oh, people aren't looking for relationships on dating apps. Well, it's dating apps. But even if we tripled it, that's 15% of men.
I don't understand what she's trying to say. That men swipe right more on women, so they deserve dates?
They like the profiles, like 4%, and the female profiles, they swipe right on like, women 16%. That's a great example of hypergamy.
Time to get debunked again. You like this? Being thoroughly debunked by a vagina haver with a second-class degree in music production? There was one infamous blog post made by OkCupid in 2009, which supposedly exposed the hypergamous nature of women. It showed that women rated 80% of men on the website as below average in attractiveness, whereas men's ratings for women's attractiveness resemble more of an equalized bell curve. They jumped on this as proof of their Pareto principle. It's generally believed that this is one of the main catalysts of the modern incel movement. And
another piece of evidence is who women choose to reproduce with. Men have only reproduced 40% of the time historically.
And historically, women have had full agency over their lives. Oh wait, we still don't in the 21st century, so I would love to know how Pearl figures it was women choosing who to reproduce with.
the blog post was eventually taken down not long after the incel attack in Toronto, where 11 people died. The incels took this to mean that big tech was trying to hide the truth of hypergamy. Ironic.
What about when a woman chops a man's off? That's happened. And they laughed about it on national television. So it's just interesting how when something's a gendered crime, men, they don't care when it's men, they only care when it's women.
It is very interesting to me that Pearl hears about a man mass murdering for the hatred of women and decides to add that a woman chopped a man's penis off. Apparently, even though a man committing murder for the sheer hatred of women is not new, not a one-off, it is the same thing as a woman cutting off a man's penis. I see what you are doing, Pearl, and it is wrong on so many levels. As I've mentioned before, people never seem to tire of finding new ways to terrorize each other, but those are two entirely different situations. Any act of violence is horrible, and unfortunately, men trying to murder women simply because they hate women is something Pearl is encouraging with her content. No, she doesn't outright tell men that women are the enemy, that they should be killed, but she does further the othering of women, the dehumanizing of women, the idea that women have been living on easy street, are the cause of men's suffering, and thus deserve whatever payback humanity would like to give them.
That same blog post actually showed that women are more likely to be open to messaging men they see as less attractive, whereas men are more likely to only message women they rate as more attractive to themselves.
But that still doesn't take away the fact that they only match with 5%. They might be less attractive, but they're still going to be in the top 15%.
So it showed that even though women rate most men as below average, they are much more likely to message them anyway. So here we are again with the incel projection of shallow dating.
I can't message you if you don't match.
This is a blog post from 2009 from OkCupid. It's been a while since I was on that site, but if you didn't have to match before you could message in 2018, I'd bet the same was true in 2009.
Differences on women. In addition to this, r/Tinder data generally tends to show that men will swipe right on most women and women will be very picky, and the ones that they do swipe right on will very likely result in a match. I need to explain why this is the case. A fact that the red pill seems to gloss over is that women are always going to be more picky than men when it comes to dating due to the increased risk of violence and pregnancy, not because of hypergamy.
The increased risk of violence and pregnancy. Let's
have a look at some stats that the manosphere completely ignores.
Okay, before she goes into this, men are more likely, most mutual domestic violence, most domestic violence cases, it's mutual, meaning they're hitting each other. Men are more likely to get hit by women one-sided than women are to get hit by men. I'd just like to say that.
We're talking about how women are pickier because of violence and pregnancy, and Pearl decides to talk about IPV and how it's mostly mutual. If you're meeting someone for the first time, you're not intimate partners. That being said, the biggest threat to women is men, and the biggest threat to men is men. This is not a haha, men are evil losers thing. It just is what it is, and you can't blame women for being cautious when interacting with men they don't know. Red pill is such a mess. On one hand, I have red pillers swarming my comments to tell me that men can never be victims, and then folks like Pearl say men are always victims. But reality will always be more complicated than black and white, good or evil, one or the other. And on that note, I'll leave a link below that goes more in depth about IPV studies.
Women who have used dating sites or apps are especially likely to report having negative interactions with others on these platforms. A majority of female online daters younger than 50 say harassment, unsolicited explicit messages are very common on dating platforms. 60% of female users aged 18 to 34 say someone on a dating site or app continued to contact them after they said they were not interested, while a similar share, 57%, report being sent a sexually explicit message or image that they didn't ask for. Roughly half of women think dating on sites or apps are an unsafe way to meet people.
More picky, fine. I'll give you 20%, I'll give you 30%, but 4.5%, you don't think that means anything?
Is she still talking about men's swiping frequency?
Roughly half of women think dating on sites or apps are an unsafe way to meet people. More under 20s.
Then why are you on the dating app? If you don't think it's safe, then get off.
I think they did, and that's why the dating apps have mostly male users.
If they thought it was an unsafe way to meet people, then that wouldn't be the #1 way people are meeting.
Sources vary on that claim. And anyway, just because you've met someone on a dating app doesn't mean you can't think it's a more unsafe way of meeting someone than through, say, a friend. Also, is she seriously arguing against a study?
Assaulted after meeting a
Okay, 671 cases. Out of how many people in the app? I'm just saying the odds. I don't know what the odds are because it doesn't say 671 cases. Like, is that in the whole US in a year? Like, that's like not, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just like, it's really not a lot when you think of how big the population.
It's a lot when you're part of that number.
Victims in 83% of the 671 cases were female and 17% were male. Oh, and I'm not done yet. Here's a full report from ABC about Tinder's failure to act on SA reports. Of the 48 people they found who reported SA to the app, only 11 even got a response from Tinder. Almost all of those responses did not detail whether any action was taken. And Match Group, the company that owns basically everything, Tinder, OkCupid, Match.com, Hinge, Plenty of Fish, and some others, has openly admitted that they do not screen for sexual predators on their free apps. A spokesperson said, "There are definitely registered sex offenders on our free products," which is a bit like a spokesperson for an ice cream company saying, "There are definitely fleshy..."
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just like, duh. Are there creeps on dating apps? Yeah, duh.
So if women are cautious about who they interact with, it's a fear mentality, and Pearl mocks them for it. And if someone thinks it's a bad thing that registered sex offenders are using dating apps, Pearl mocks them for it because, well, of course registered sex offenders are on there. Pearl, being a creep does not get you on the sex offender registry.
Spiders in some tubs.
But this kind of goes back to like the modern woman fear mentality. Like if you're always thinking of the worst possible scenario, it's like, what do they say? It's like you're going and dating into a place of fear. Is that really what you want to be doing?
It's not being in a place of fear. It's just being smart. Good grief, this woman is dense. Although, to be fair, she's paid to be.
Of our ice cream. Don't blame me, I just work here. So lucky you, ladies. While Tinder makes men pay for the slight hope of more matches, you'll have to pay for the assurance that you won't be assaulted.
I'm sorry, there is never 100% assurance that you won't be assaulted. It doesn't matter if you meet someone on the street or you meet someone on an app. There's never 100% guarantee. All you can do is take precautions. But I promise you, also,
Has anyone else noticed that Pearl gets really excited when she thinks she's about to say something clever?
I'd like to point out to a study that was done. There is a guy that put that he was he put a model picture and put that he was a sex offender. Like he's essayed a 15-year-old or something. Girls didn't care. They didn't give a shit. They literally kept messaging.
Does Pearl know what a study is? I, of course, looked this up, and apparently this was an experiment by some man on Reddit. That is not a study.
And even then, it's not guaranteed.
On top of that, if women were afraid of being assaulted, why are y'all having kids with violent offenders?
Why are you all having kids with violent offenders? You all. We've already talked about this, but the majority of women have kids with men who are not violent offenders because most men are not violent offenders.
I cannot stress this enough. Dating apps do not represent real life. Dating apps represent...
They're the number one way people are meeting.
Even if we assume that's true, that doesn't change Münecat statement. Dating apps are part of social media, and social media is curated. You see what people want you to see. Real life is much messier. It's like Pearl just shuts down her brain and has a few talking points she repeats.
An extremely shallow, gamified version of dating that artificially creates the Pareto principle. Since women are more...
No. I don't think so. I think dating apps are just letting women be honest. Like if they could have everything, if we could have everything we wanted in a man, like the filters will let us do it. 80% of women put height filters on, so they won't date a guy below 6 foot.
Which speaks to what Münecat was saying. Dating apps create a shallow, gamified version of dating. And the ratio of men to women on dating apps makes it very easy to create a sense of abundance where you can afford to filter out whatever you think to filter out because you'll always be certain of more matches. And I'm really confused by the height thing because... So? Some people are shallow. Do you really want them to suck it up and date you anyway, even though they don't actually find you attractive for one petty reason or another?
Likely to have had previous negative experiences.
So maybe on an app it's 5%. Maybe in real life, let's quadruple it and say it's 20%. That's still only 20% of men.
Is Pearl really trying to say that only 20% of men are in relationships?
With men, I'm not discounting that men have them too, but the fact that women have them more often than men is relevant here. So women are more likely to have their guards up when swiping.
It's so interesting. Feminists always want to take like the accountability off of women. And like, whenever there's an unflattering fact about women, it's always like, oh, it's because of men.
That makes no sense. Talking about how statistically women are more likely to be assaulted, more likely to receive unsolicited messages, and so on. That's removing accountability from women? Accountability about what? Not swiping left on more men on dating apps?
And chatting, so this causes men to get less matches on the ladies that they're swiping right on, and the men are getting annoyed that they're getting less matches because this leads to less of a chance that they'll find someone that they like. To them, this just becomes a numbers game, so they start swiping right on more and more and more women, and the women start to realize that whoever they swipe right on, they're quite likely to get a match with them. And because they don't want too many unsolicited pictures of male genitalia taken with a pissy toilet bowl in the background to deal with.
Lady, come on. I promise to God, if I swipe left on a dating app, it is not because I'm afraid I'm going to get an unsolicited dick pic. If that's what you're afraid of, get off dating apps. Go meet people in person. If that's what you want. And there's no guarantee anywhere that could happen.
Another red pill thing, they have no sense of humor.
But you're going to say, oh.
Are Pearl's videos unedited?
Start being more picky, confident that this won't matter because they'll still get a lot of matches anyway. As the women get more picky, the men get less and less picky. It's a...
Yeah, that's true. As women get more picky, men get less and less picky, yeah. Men are as picky as their options. They're not. Yeah.
Negative feedback loop. It's not real life.
See, okay, I used to think that, like, oh, it's not real life. I would argue that women are less picky in person. I would agree. But again, even if it's 5% and we quadruple it, that's still 20%. Let's up it to 30%.
30% of what? Men getting dates?
And then I just started like walking into a room and noticing like which guys I would want to date in that room. And I was like, oh my gosh, it really is a small percent of men.
So Pearl thinks it's a problem that women are too picky when it comes to dating. And she just admitted that she's also too picky when it comes to dating?
Stat that Red Pill seems to ignore. 80% of users on Tinder are male and 20% are female. The bad experiences are causing women to leave the apps.
That's an interesting stat. I think men just need it more.
Need what more?
Altogether. This means that there are women out there, guess what, in real life, who are single and want to meet somebody.
But you know what the number one dating app is? Instagram.
Not on a dating app. From the incel perspective, women are hypergamous,
True.
calculating, and uncaring as they leverage emerging technology in the pursuit of the ideal masculine partner while maximizing the resources they yield from orbiters. Women are also...
Oh, that's so true. Come on. The friend zone.
The friend zone does not exist. If you are friends with someone because you think they might give you sex at some point if you stick around, you are not a friend.
Simultaneously sexual commodities, which can be quantitatively evaluated, subject to market distortions, or be unfairly distributed. Here, incels doubly deny women their humanity, as women are manipulative when acting and overpriced when objectified. While incels' observations are accurate, their explanations for these observations are grounded in a reductive and dehumanizing descriptions of...
Oh, so it says, while incels observation. Wait, so her study says we're right?
Does Pearl consider herself an incel?
With men and women. All of a sudden, communism doesn't sound so bad to these guys when it means the equal distribution of getting your wet. Another...
No! That's not what guys are saying. I mean, I think saying to a woman, top 5% of men when you're an average chick probably isn't realistic. I don't really think that's a dehumanizing.
I have no idea what she tried to say here. Though, to be fair, I don't think she knows either.
That they love to point to is this one, which shows that almost a third of men are now reporting no sex in the last year. But zooming out and looking at the rest of this data that this graph comes from, it shows that the amount of men sleeping with over 3 women in the last year is still more than the amount of women doing the same. On the whole, men are still being more promiscuous.
Small percentage of men. Small percentage.
Than women, which doesn't track with their 80% of women sleeping with all of the Chads theory. The data would suggest to me that women still want relationships with men, but men are increasingly attempting...
I'm actually glad she brought studies. This is interesting.
She brought 6 pages of sources, Pearl, and you brought none, though you are happy to throw out anecdotes and opinions as though they're evidence.
Oh, that would still make sense with the Chad theory.
Citation needed.
The dating apps for hookups, but are ending up more lonely than they were before. In short, guys, gals, and NBs, try opening yourself up to experiences which will help you meet people in real life.
I agree with that part.
Friends with people of all genders more. Talk to people even if you don't find them attractive, because who knows, they could even introduce you to other people you may end up being intimate partners with, or maybe you've just found a new friend. It's about self-improvement, exercising your social muscle, and fighting that inner goblin that just wants to stay inside.
Feminists always paint this scary picture of the world for women.
We don't have to paint the picture, Pearl. The world paints it for us.
And I just disagree.
Well, we knew that. She makes her money pandering to men.
And I think it's silly to say that women are not hypergamous when only 40% of men have reproduced historically.
This is now the 3rd or 4th time she said that in this video.
Most women want to date a guy that makes more money. Most women want to date a guy taller than them. Most women want to date a guy smarter than them. If you deny that, you're just denying reality.
Everything Pearl just said is based on the idea that we're in some sort of post-feminist utopia and gender roles haven't existed for generations, and what we have now is our natural state, which is so far from the truth.
If you want to wonder if Chads are sleeping with all the women, just look at an NBA team and ask yourself how many guys they sleep with. The guys on those teams, rappers, entertainers, sleep with in a month. Probably more than most men will sleep with in their lifetime.
Maybe, but what does it matter? Or is that the goal, to sleep with as many people as possible?
You can also look at Genghis Khan. Man had a lot of kids.
Am I to assume from this that Pearl thinks so long as you have power, you'll have women lining up to sleep with you? I initially thought this was Pearl debunking Müncat's video, and after watching, that was the best she's got. I know she was just doing a reaction, but if Pearl is a true believer in Red Pill, shouldn't it have been easy to prove Münecat wrong? Shouldn't she want to? At least if nothing else, this video is a good example of how red pill works. They form their conclusion, women are to blame, and then they look for proof to fit around their conclusion, which is pretty easy if you work off the assumption that women secretly rule the world, and thus, studies and such aren't to be trusted because they're actually being controlled by women. Also, women are liars. I have a lot more to say, but we're not done with Pearl yet, and this video is long enough. I say that as if the next one isn't going to be even longer, but anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.